All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Rise Zion. I hope everybody's having a great evening tonight. Sorry for the confusion. We had a little bit of a problem with our new broadcast. With our new broadcast, it seems like we might have had a little bit of technical difficulties. I had to delete it and then start this new one. It looks like we're up and running now. I'll just wait for people to start coming into the chat here. Make sure before we get started to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. We're back here in the studio. We're going to continue our painting of Captain Moroni. It's been a really interesting process doing this painting. I'll let you see that here in just a sec as we need to connect here so you can see that. There we go. Yeah, it's looking pretty good. Hopefully this is not too bright to where you can't see it. But yeah, we're just going to continue doing, we're going to do a little bit of a drawing today just to redraw that arm that we had to paint over the other day. And so I think that's what I'm going to do today. And we're not going to be filming too late this evening, just because it's getting a little late. We started a little late, unfortunately. But yeah, we can definitely just work on that arm and this drop back in now that the paint's all dry again. And we can get the white pencil here. I hope everybody's having a great evening. Let's put this in the chat. I'll put in the chat here for members only the emojis. We have a new emoji available for everybody. It's the nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition emoji. But yeah, for those of you who don't know, that is a comedy skit from Monty Python's Flying Circus. And it's just a skit that my friends and I enjoy to watch every once in a while. It's quite silly. Usually the skit starts out with somebody in a conversation with somebody else, and they'll be having a conversation and they'll be asking them questions or something, and they'll say, well, I wasn't expecting the Spanish Inquisition. That was something that people used to say. And then as soon as they say that, three cardinals dressed in the red the red robes of cardinals will jump through the doorway and they scream, nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition, and then they go through this whole skit that they have, and it's it's quite humorous, and you can look it up on YouTube if you'd like to. But yeah, I'm going to draw in this arm again. I'm going to make sure that it's the right size, because I think that what happened was, as we were drawing in this arm the first time, we kind of started putting this armor in, and it made the perspectives warped, and so our arm became too long somehow in our drawing, which happens every once in a while. So we'll just come in here and make it shorter. That's always a tricky thing when you're trying to draw, is overcoming the optical illusions that we create for ourselves. And we're going to try to draw our arm back in here. This is the other arm, so we're going to make it try to match the other arm, which seems to be fairly good. the other hand. And sometimes, if you want to hold a sword, right, you have to make sure that. Oh, look, we got people joining us in the chat. Welcome, welcome, Weston. Welcome, Ginny. Welcome, Dakota. Welcome, Ginny. Welcome, everybody. So I hope you're all having a fantastic evening. Welcome, Jellybean. Welcome. Yes. Oh, so Weston does sort of some abstraction painting. Oh, and Weston found out that his relatives, his grandma, actually watches the show as well. That's exciting. It's always interesting all the connections that people make, and they don't realize that other people watch the show. And really, our program hasn't been around for very long. We've only been doing this for just about a year now, you guys. And we've seen remarkable growth. Now, the paint is still just a little bit tacky. You can see that it's like scraping off as I'm drawing over it. But yeah, we're gonna come in here. We're gonna draw the sword in again. We're gonna try to back up and look at it from a distance. And I think that something also very odd is that his hair is giving the illusion that his head is like more forward than it should be. So we're gonna come in here. We're probably gonna have to modify his hair. Unfortunately, I do like the angle of it, but it's making his head look a little off. So we're gonna have to fix that. Problems. But that's the problem. That's the thing with art. It's just like a bunch of. It's fixing problems. That's what art is. Art is making problems, avoiding problems, and fixing problems. Yes, we're going to draw the blade here. The blade is a curved blade. Known as a falcata blade. Yeah, today's episode was really quite interesting. The church has been posting a lot recently about President Nelson's birthday that's coming up. It's really, truly remarkable that he is 101 years old. That's an amazing and miraculous feat on its own. But yeah, the incredible consistency of President Holland's messages is really quite something when you actually research and look into it. As I just barely uh, recently discovered his talk, and he like references his older talks at the same time. So it's like he's drawing upon his older talks and adding to them, and he keeps adding to them as time goes by. It appears to me that's what's going on. But yeah, so we had this. We had his Think Celestial talk, which was being referenced by the church's the social media post that they created today, President Nelson. But in it, I noticed that President Nelson was referencing his talk entitled his BYU address, actually. Oh, what is it called? The beginning from the end, or like, no, the beginning from the end, or something like that. I'm having a hard time thinking, you guys. It's a little late. Yes, I just thought it was really interesting how President Nelson has been exploring these themes, but not only exploring them, but adding to them over time. And it just appears to me that God has really used his entire life as a of testimony, really, of a good example for all of us as well, but just like a testimony of the Lord's word. Had an incredible life as a successful surgeon, as an apostle, and as prophet. Okay. All right. I think we got a good outline. Let's start our painting now. We'll start adding some whites back in here, and hopefully we haven't messed it up again. It doesn't appear to be, but you never know. Sometimes you start painting and you realize that it just looks a little bit funny still. But it looks pretty good so far, which is a good sign. Just come in here with our paintbrush, and it looks like all our paints are dried out from the time that we were away. We haven't painted for some time, you guys. I just have been so busy and I haven't had time to just sit down and actually paint. We've been trying to hire people for my graphic design business, and I've been interviewing people, and it's been an interesting experience. It's been a little bit hectic these last few days. Oh, Shelly has joined us. Welcome, Shelly. And Ginny says 101. Yes, absolutely. Barbara's joined us. Barb here from Texas. Welcome, Barb from Texas. And that's a really amazing thing too. I've really enjoyed seeing where all of you guys are from as well. When you put in the chat where you're from, it's been really remarkable. We've had people from all over the world, including Africa and like places like Texas, all over the United States, all over the world. It's been really, really fascinating to see. Chile, of course. It's really inspiring for me because it is encouraging that people all over the world are seeing the messages that we put out. And I don't know, really just fascinating. So if you guys stop in, you can always just put in the chat where you guys are from if you don't know what else to say. You can ask me questions too. Just because I'm painting doesn't mean that we don't need topics of conversation. And really, I think that that is a challenge of doing these painting live streams, is that sometimes I really just don't know what to talk about. And you guys help me in the chats by bringing stuff up and we can talk about it. And it's always fun to have these conversations with you guys. People send me their emails too about different things that have come up over the years. Different quotes from apostles and stuff, and of course, stake conference reports. So today I've been watching a documentary on Netflix called it's the Trainwreck series. The Trainwreck series has a bunch of different documentaries where things just go wrong. And I've been watching the documentary about the boy in the balloon. And it's like I laugh, but it would be really horrifying if that were the case. But essentially what happened, if you guys care to know, and maybe I shouldn't say spoilers, but I can talk about it just for a little bit. If you don't want to hear the spoilers, put the mute on. This is your spoiler alert warning. Okay, so this is what happened. So there's this family, and the dad is an inventor, and he also does like YouTube videos and stuff. And he thought it would be a really cool idea to create a mode of transportation, experimental mode of transportation, like a UFO. And so he starts building this giant. It's this pretty big sized UFO made of like polymer, metallic, um, like polymer of some sort. And they decide to test it. But as they're testing it, the tethers break off, and so the balloon floats away. And their son runs up in a panic and saying, "I think Falcon was in the balloon." And so it like started this whole drama, and they believed that their son Falcon had crawled into the balloon, and that they had just launched their son in this helium flotation device, this helium balloon shaped like a UFO. And so they contact the police, to try to supposedly save their son. And it's just this whole thing. And then people freak out because they finally get the UFO down to the ground, and it turns out that the son was in the attic the entire time. And he wasn't in any danger at all. And so of course everybody thinks it is a hoax just to try to get media attention. And to be honest, it kind of looks that way to me. I don't know. If you guys have seen that, let me know what you think in the chat. But yeah, I shouldn't talk about spoilers, I guess. But in any case, that's what I've been entertaining myself with, is watching the documentaries when I can. I'm not working. Um, yeah, I'm not trying to just relax and stuff. Anyway, that was kind of a funny one of those. I was not expecting that to happen. Okay. Mm-hmm. This paintbrush is almost too fuzzy now to get these fine details in, so we're gonna have to switch paintbrushes. All right, let's see what we got going on in the chat. Morris says a testimony of making good choices. Yes, that is absolutely true. President Nelson has an excellent record of making excellent choices and keeping things in perspective. Steve Barry says Mount Shasta, California. Welcome, Steve Barry, from Mount Shasta. Barbara Bilberry Tillman says, thanks, I have gotten a lot of my word watching you now. Oh, that's so exciting, Barbara. Like I'm really excited that people are watching it, and it's becoming more and more of a community that people get together and talk about. And Jenny says, middle of nowhere, Missouri. I lost my 3-year-old once when he fell asleep in a laundry pile in our room. That's funny. I'm sure it wasn't funny at the time if you couldn't find your son. But yes, in hindsight, it's quite funny. Hopefully, you didn't have the police involved in everything in a panic. But yeah, it was quite a funny episode. And then they're asking questions like on this documentary, like, well, did the parents actually just stage this whole thing for publicity for their so they could get on TV and there's this whole thing. I don't know. The moral of the story is always never talk to the police because the police are always just trying to trick you. That's the thing. Trick you into giving a confession. Hmm. Police are always tricky. Jenny says that her husband was running up and down the road looking for their son. That would be very scary for a bit. And Steve, Mount Shasta is a very mystical place, isn't it? So I've heard. Heard a lot of the spiritual people go to Mount Shasta. It's supposed to be like super spiritual or something. So I've heard. Dakota has joined us. Dakota says, Seth, I want you to know something. You played a part in my reactivation. While I was on the road for over 2 years, you provided the final nudge and you went to church for the first time in over a decade. Wow, think that is so amazing, Dakota. I'm so glad to hear that. And that's such an encouraging thing for you to say to me because it's really encouraging that I'm making a difference, I guess. So thank you for sharing that. And I'm so glad that you guys are or that you've been going back to church. That's so exciting and just be there. Jenny has sent a UFO or an alien emoji. Yes, a lot of people in purple robes. So I've heard. So I've heard. Looks like I need some more of our brown color for this shadow. I'm trying to mix some burnt umber. Steve says great fishing. Well, that's good. It does look very beautiful there from what I've seen. I guess that the cloud, like the weather patterns over Mount Shasta, make the clouds turn into like UFO shapes sometimes. Dakota says you are making a difference bigger than you may know. Well, thank you, Dakota. I'm so appreciative of that. Appreciative. Thank you for sharing that with us. And I like one of the I think one of the best things of the week is just going to sacrament meeting and partaking of the sacrament every week and feeling that spirit. And I do always emphasize that on my channels, like never go to bed at night without feeling the Holy Spirit and without having that assurance, I guess, every night that we're doing we're doing okay, we're doing what we need to be doing. And just going to church and partaking of the sacrament is another way to do that. And I really, that's like one of the best parts of going to church, I think. Of course, there's many great things for going about going to church, but that's one of the big ones for me is just having a experience with the Holy Spirit every week. And so it's really great to hear that we're encouraging people to go back to church and just have a good time with a good relationship with Heavenly Father. This is too blue. Now I've done it. Let's try this. Still too blue. This might be like way too dark. Oh, this is the danger though, starting over, because now the arms are going to look different. So we're kind of in trouble. Well, I guess we can use this here. I'm just going to make his dark locks come down in front of his neck here because we've been struggling with this area. I've been struggling with this area. You guys are partakers of this struggle. We are struggling. We are struggling with this area together. But yeah, I'm going to. Oh. Yes, we're all a church family, Jenny says. Shelly says Alma 3737. I love that. Alma 3737. Who's going to conference, Barbara says. Shelly, would you mind quoting the entire verse if you can? I would love to read it word for word. I don't know if it will fit. Bernice says, you've been helping me a whole lot. I'm so glad to hear that as well, Bernice. Thank you for sharing that. We just love having a good time here on this channel. I love talking about fun things, and I think that that's really important. Just talking about, like all this cool stuff that we don't typically get to talk about because it's not necessarily the right setting in Sunday school, for example. Although, a lot of the information that I do share is and would be appropriate for Sunday school. But yeah, we just like having a fun time and talking about cool things on this channel. And just having kind of an open mind about different aspects. Of course, I'm never going to share anything, that's just like completely like wacko out there, but without having it been backed up by prophets and apostles and scriptures, right? You got to back it up with apostles, prophets, and scriptures. Where is my yellow? I just put yellow in here and I can't find it. Well, that's because I've covered it up with. There we go. All right. All right, let's come in here. I'm going to put some yellow here. I don't want his hair to be green, though. We've got to be careful not to mix any blue in there. And so really the real danger here with starting over with this new arm is that the colors are not going to match. And so we have to make the colors match gradually. because we're blending wet paint together with all these different colors that we don't have on the other arm. It's just going to be a mess for a little bit until we can get this arm figured out. Yes. Got the thumb. Got fingers wrapping around this hilt of the sword. We've got the sword hilt here. Oh, this is going to be such a mess. Okay. All right. And I think I might need to order more paints as well. Craig says, um, join the church. Oh, no, Barbara. Let's see. I might hearing and oh, okay. Let's see. I'm missing some messages. Barbara says, "Who's going to conference?" Oh, yes. I forgot to answer that, Barbara. I will not be able to go to conference personally, but I will be just watching on television. I am not well connected enough, Barbara, in order to attend the prestigious conference. In order for one to be connected, one must know individuals. Ginny says, I have like 3 or 4 church moms. That's good. That's good. Okay, and let's see. Dakota says, I might watch that online. Part of my issue is I have a very rough time with hearing in social settings. I hear you. Craig is asking if I am married or have kids. I'm sorry, Craig, I don't answer questions of a personal nature like that. Barbara says, I joined the church after years of searching in 24 and my endowment in this past May. I joined the church after years of searching in 24, and my endowment is this past May. In 24. Oh, 2024. I see what you're saying. All right. Well, welcome, Barbara. I'm so glad that you're here with us, and it's such an exciting journey to have you start so recently in 2024. That is so exciting, and I'm so excited for you to go to the temple and to experience the temple. That's so exciting. That's an exciting thing. And Craig says, Barbara, Billy Tillman, not me. It's too far. Oh, to go to general conference. Yes, I understand, Craig. That is, for some of us, it's too far. Barbara says, you have helped me learn. I'm so glad. Jelly Bean says, I'm just watching it on TV. Yep. I like just watching it on the television. I like just chilling and relaxing and being able to make cinnamon rolls. Oh, Steve Barry says, okay, I got to tell you, Zion was my first good duck dog, and my son's name is Seth. Oh, okay. Well, that's great. We got a dog and a and a son all in one program here for you, Steve. Yes, and ceilings. Barbara says yes. That's so exciting. Ceilings. What a unique part of Latter Day Saint doctrine where, well, it's like most people believe, I think inherently, that they believe that after this life that they'll be able to be with their family and their friends after this life, except for their pastors don't teach that. We teach that after this life, it's till death do you part, right? And people are not married in heaven is what they say. But the restored gospel teaches otherwise. And I do think that most people inherently do believe that after this life that we are able to be with our loved ones. We're able to continue the same kind of relationships that we had here on earth with them. Um, except as Joseph Smith said, it is coupled with eternal glory rather than this mortal sort of imperfect existence. Yeah, so I'm just here trying to color match this arm here to the other arm, and it's going to take a little bit of time. We have really a ways to go in terms of that. Oh, you guys, I have good news. I have finished book 3 of the Stormlight Archives by Brandon Sanderson, and I am continuing reading, or listening to rather, book 4. And it is much more interesting so far than book 3, I believe. It is my belief. I did not enjoy book 3 very much. It was so slow. I did not enjoy it. Okay, let's say this. I didn't enjoy it as much as the other books. Let's just say that. Of course, it was good. We love Brandon, and we love his writing style and everything. But book 3 was just a little bit of a slog for me for some reason, and I enjoyed it, but just not as good as the other ones. There, I said it. I love Brandon though. I got to meet him at Comic Con once in the as I was selling artwork at Comic Con once, and he came by because somebody who had helped worked on his covers was actually in the stall right next to me, and so he came by and said hi. I was able to say hi there. How are you, Brandon? And so now we're on first term. We're on a first name basis. Not really. Yes, I quite enjoy Brandon's writing. Something very interesting about Brandon's style of writing is like it's really interesting because it's like he tries very hard not to be pretentious, I think, and I do appreciate that. But I think at the same time, like a lot of his books don't ever really go deeper than the surface level of what he's saying. And so it's a really clear writing style. Like it's very, very transparent and clear, and he spells out exactly what's happening and exactly what things look like and exactly how the world's rules work. But if I had to give a critique of Brandon, I would say that it's really there's nothing really much deeper than the surface. Well, I do can commend him for he does take up important you know like important social issues like mental illness, for example. Like I think just about everybody in the Stormlight Archives has a mental illness of some kind, which is really interesting. I don't know if he intentionally set out to do that or if it just kind of developed that way, but yeah, he does deal with these important issues. So I was just talking about with some of my friends the other day about judging different types of literature, and that's kind of what is inspiring this conversation with you guys this evening. But I kind of want to invent like a different scale of judging different types of literature in terms of it will be kind of like a subjective scale, of course, because everything is just based on our subjective experience. But I want some more and of objective, more of an objective measurement tool to kind of base and to be able to kind of appropriately judge literature in a way that we're not just saying, okay, I like this and I don't like this. And so what I'm kind of thinking, you guys, and you can let me know what you guys think in the chat if my theory kind of makes sense, is I'm envisioning sort of a scale. And it is a linear graph. Okay, so you have an x-axis and a y-axis. Along the y-axis, you have complexity of writing. And then on the, did I say the x-axis? Yes, on the x-axis, you would have complexity of writing. So on like one end, you'd have like kindergarten writing. That's like near zero. Like the type of writing that's like, like, here is Bob. Bob sees dog. Bob and dog go on walk. It's like very, very not complex. And then on the other end of the scale, you'd have very highly complex texts, such as um, like it can range a great deal. Like you could have encyclopedias that are very complex, or you could have like very complex texts like the Bible, for example. But then on the y-axis, you have depth. Okay, so on the x-axis, you have complexity. On the y-axis, you have depth. And then on that, I'm still trying to figure out, okay, so how do we measure different types of depth? And one of, like, if we're putting like on the highest end of the scale, like scripture and stuff like that, so we have like different levels. And scripture is very self-referential. It is very very complex, but at the same time it's also very deep, and it has multiple layers of meaning. It is not a simple text by any stretch of the imagination. So I think that might be one way. But then, like, so like at the very bottom of the scale, you'd have not very deep text at all on the y-axis. So you'd have, like, for example, just a dictionary. It's a very complex text, but at the same time, it's not deep at all because it just gives you the definition of words, right? And that's kind of how Brandon's writing is. It's a very complex text because he's outlining all of these rules, like for his magic-based systems. So it is a very complex text, but at the same time, it's very, very straightforward, and so the depth is not quite there. It does have some depth though, because it does talk about complex social issues like mental illness, for example, and slavery, and things that are important. So it's not quite all the way up to the level of scripture, but it is quite a complex text with some depth. It's not completely without depth. But anyway, that's just what I've been thinking about in terms of how to judge a text, or how to place a text on kind of a subjective scale, so that you can judge what kind of literature is more important, I guess, in some ways. Oh, and Adam Danielson says, what is a fantasy book that has depth in your estimation? That is a very excellent question, Adam. So, for example, and this on the scale of complexity would not be a very complex text at all. It is actually a juvenile fiction book, so it would not be, on the x-axis, a very complex text. It's very simple to read. However, there is a great deal of depth to this text as well, and it is Terran Wanderer by Lloyd what's his name, Lloyd. It's the Black Cauldron series, you guys. The Black Cauldron and Terran Wanderer is, I believe, the fourth installment of the 5-book series. And there is incredible depth to that text. There's something definitely going on there. And it's not complex in the sense that it doesn't use a complex vocabulary. It doesn't develop a very deep world building. It doesn't develop a the characters are pretty complex, but they're not that complex, you know? They don't have to be. But this is the part where things get really interesting. And it's a part at the very end of Terran Wanderer. And if you haven't read it, another spoil alert, you guys, I definitely recommend reading this book if you haven't already. But during the entire book of the fourth book of Terran Wanderer, so he leaves his home. He leaves the place where he grew up as a kid, right? And this place is very much like a Garden of Eden like scenario. But he leaves this in order to find out who his father is. He wants to figure out who he is what he's really trying to figure out. Okay? So right off the bat, it's a very deep concept for a child's book. So he goes out and he does this whole exploration of himself. At the very end of the book, there's this part that I just keep coming back to in my mind over and over again as an example of something that is extraordinarily profound. But the character Terran finds out that there is this magic pool, a magic spring that reveals the truth if you look into it. And so he decides that he's going to go to this pool, look into it, and find out who he really is. And so he goes, and it's in this cave. And so he has to enter into this cave, this subterranean area. And it represents kind of the dark night of the soul, right? You have to enter into this cave. You have to go underground and have to experience a sort of figurative death, right? In order to access this cave and this pool of water that reveals the truth. So he goes to it and he looks into it, and as he's gazing into the water, there is this character who's been tormenting Terran the entire time. He's this bandit, right? And it's suggested and hinted at during the entire text of the book that this bandit character might in fact be Terran's father. Okay? And he looks into the pool of water and he's asking the question, who am I? And he sees the face of the burglar, or the bad guy, right? And it's not a magical vision. It actually turns out that the bad guy is right behind him, and they get into this fight. And so they have this fight that ensues, and it's not a fight between do you see the symbolic nature of this fight? He's not actually fighting the bandit. He's fighting himself, and the natural proclivities that all of us have, I guess, as the natural man, to be just like this character. And I don't know, it's just such a deep thing. But he prevails in the fight. He overcomes this bandit, and he emerges from the cave, if I remember correctly, victorious, having overcome this. And he figures that we're left wondering, still, the author never answers the question as to whether or not the bandit was Terran's father or not. We're left wondering that still. But Taran decides that he is going to be his own person and he's going to forge his own destiny. And it doesn't matter who his father or mother is. This whole time he was kind of hoping that his father would have been some sort of a lord, or that his mother was a queen or something of that sort. But it turns out, there's a very real possibility that his father and that he himself might be related to, uh, you know, this character that really represents this sort of natural man sort of individual. And that is the case for all of us, isn't it? But yeah, it was an extraordinarily deep book for a children's book. Lloyd Alexander is the author, you guys. I just thought of his name. Lloyd Alexander. Fantastic author. Another example of a fictional book that has some real depth to it is, I would say, um, since we're getting kind of close to Halloween, you guys, I would probably say some of Stephen King's books have some real depth to them. He likes to swear a lot, though, so read with caution, right? But others of his are more like Harlequin books, where you just pick them up at the gas station, right? And they're just not very good. So it's really hit and miss with Stephen King. But others of his books, like Pet Cemetery, for example, I would classify that as definitely having some real depth to it. Um, because in that one, he really explores he really explores some of the darkest um, things that exist in the human psyche in relation to death, in particular. And he really pushes the boundary as to what horror can be. He explores the definition of horror in ways that are really provocative, I guess. And the story behind that book is actually really fascinating too, because it's actually based on a true event as well that happened to him as an author. The main character in the book is a doctor, not an author, but he writes himself kind of into it. But yeah, so what happens is that as he was having a write, Stephen King himself was having a writing internship or some such. He was like teaching writing or something at a university in Maine. Um, and as a part of this, he got to move into a kind of a fancy house, kind of near the university, which is what happens in the book Pet Cemetery. And by this house was a freeway that ran right in front of the house. And these big diesel trucks would come barreling down this road every so often, because there was a big like a shipping facility that was nearby. Not a shipping facility, to some sort of a company. I can't remember, like a chemical company or something. These big diesels would come barreling by their house fairly frequently. And one day, as they were all out in the yard, the whole family, Stephen King and his entire family were out in the front yard, and they could hear this truck coming. You could hear him coming from quite a ways away. And their son was playing with a ball, and the ball started rolling out into the road, and the son ran out and started running towards the road, and they could hear this truck coming. And of course, Stephen King like tackled his son and like wouldn't let him, caught his son before he ran out into the road and was, tragically, hit and killed probably by this diesel. But that was the basis for the entire novel of Pet Cemetery, this event that really happened. And he really explored some really dark things in this book about, what it is to be afraid and, um, being afraid of death, even as a parent. And so, yeah, I think that I would qualify that as definitely, he's definitely saying something worth saying. Let's just say that he has something important to say about horror. And I think that that definitely would have to factor in some way into the scale of trying to determine whether or not something has a whole lot of depth. Not that Brandon Sanderson doesn't have anything important to say. Yeah, Adam says I was going to say that many books in horror genres like to play with deep ideas. That is very true. Yeah, yeah, a lot of horror books do that. They like touch on horror books like to touch on ideas that are uncomfortable and um what makes us scared as human beings sometimes says a lot about who we are as human beings as well. Yeah, Lloyd Alexander, love him. Love it. I love Lloyd Alexander. I love to read a lot, you guys. I like to read all sorts of different things. How are we going to get this little dot? We have to put a little dot of paint in the corner of the eye. I think I'm going to use my pencil and just put it in the paint and then just put a little dot of paint right there. There. Yeah, and I guess just what I'm trying to say, just to wrap up that idea, is that I just don't think that Brandon Sanderson's writing reaches that same depth. It's like even though he's very obvious to bring up like the very real issues of slavery, the very real issues of mental illness. He does so in a very oblique way, an opaque way. There's not very much depth to it because he just comes out and talks about it. He doesn't explore it in a way that is not obvious with multiple layers of meaning. And the scriptures have so many different layers of meaning. It's insane. It really does. In my view, it does add additional evidence as to why the Bible and the Book of Mormon are divinely inspired texts because of the incredible depth that exists in that literature. just if you're trying to analyze it as a work of literature. It's really quite an incredible book. Incredible books, the Book of Mormon, and imagine trying to write the Book of Mormon. Yeah. To put this bracer on his arm and it's not letting me because the paint is like too diluted. Might just have to let it dry and then add additional layers of paint later. Yeah, what do you guys like to read, you guys? You tell me what you guys like to read. I'm monologuing here. I'm monologuing about literature. You sly dogs got me monologuing. Incredibles quote. Okay. Let me know what literature you enjoy. Let's see. All right. Lindsay Black has joined us. Hello, Lindsay. Welcome, welcome. Alma has said at some time it would be nice to see a visualized painting of the stripling warriors and their fathers of peace. Oh, that would be kind of cool. That'd be a very complex one, Alma, for sure. Lindsay Black says, I'd love to read. I just don't have the time I used to. Yeah, that's why I listen to. I don't really read. I mostly listen to books nowadays because you can listen at double speed and you can go on a walk at the same time or run in the mornings. And so, yeah, I think audiobooks are quite the invention, let's say. But yeah, I quite enjoy listening to different things. Oh, you guys, one thing I started listening to and I never got to finish it was Katarina by Tolstoy, I think it is. There's a lot going on in that too. I think it's called Katarina. I'm not sure. Katarina. Yeah, there's a lot going on in that book. I can tell you already, just from the first few chapters that I had listened to before I had to return it. That was quite the book. I'm gonna have to finish that sometime. All right. Well, you guys, I think that we're about done for this evening. Thank you guys for joining us. We are at 9:43. 9:43. All right, let's end this live stream, you guys. Let me know if you have any final questions before we end this evening. I'm doing pretty well, Lindsay. I'm doing pretty well. I'm pretty tired. I think that most people are pretty tired at this time. But we'll be doing a live stream tomorrow, you guys, that is not painting. We'll be doing a very fascinating article that we'll be reading. So yeah, make sure to join us tomorrow evening. We're going to try to start a little earlier. Lindsay says, I'm a little diverse. I've read some classics, some mystery, some fantasy. I think it's really good to read everything. I really love reading everything. I've read a lot of modern things recently, like from something modern that I read was from, I can't even remember her name. Oh, I don't agree with her a lot of times. What is her name? Well, it's Neil Gaiman's wife. I can't remember her name though, for the life of me. I think it's Amanda Palmer or something like that. But anyway, her book is about asking for what you want, which is very interesting. I found it to be a very particularly interesting book, although I don't agree with everything in it, for sure. But yeah, I read everything as I come to it. All right, you guys. Well, thank you so much for watching this evening. Before we go, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Make sure to put a comment in the comments. Oh yeah, so Lindsay's been reading a lot of church materials lately, church history and Millennial Messiah. Yes. I've been perusing through Millennial Messiah as well. Books on the Old Temple, looking into some Old Testament type books. Very, very important stuff. No worry, Lindsay. It's pretty late. I appreciate you popping in. It's okay though. Don't worry about it. We will just have to do our cool live stream tomorrow, and more people will join us. We have 11 concurrent viewers right now. I don't, people are just not really interested in the painting live streams. But I appreciate all of you guys being here and just having a fun time with us this evening. Alma says, I love the zingers that are not in the movies later. Not sure exactly what you're referring to. So Alma Deckard says pace. Oh, I've wanted to see Moroni. Oh, all right. Moroni's coming along. I'll show you Moroni. Make sure it's straight. Camera gets a little strange and wonky sometimes, so I have to straighten the camera angle. Oh, it's coming along, Lindsay. It's not quite ready to be finished yet. We still have a lot of details to work out here, and a lot of finishing touches. That's kind of the problem with these paintings that are so detailed with all this different stuff in it. Alma says, I've started to read the Old Testament in Hebrew. That's fun. I'm sure there's all sorts of insights that one can get from reading it in Hebrew. Yes, no wonder we have the JST. It's very complex, I bet. And Lindsay says, I've got to make some space on my wall. Oh, I would definitely appreciate that, Lindsay. When it gets finished, I'm trying to make a piece that you will be proud of for your wall, for sure. I would definitely want to do that sometime as well, if I could ever read Hebrew. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching this evening. We'll talk to you guys later, okay? Talk to you tomorrow. And come ready to write your questions in the chat. Last time we had over 300 people join us on a Thursday live stream. And there was a lot of questions and I didn't get to all of them. And so it was a really fun live stream. All right. We'll talk to you guys later. Good night.